Hey everybody, Coach here, and welcome to this week's podcast. Hey, continuing and wrapping up our three-part series on landscape frustrations that homeowners suffer. I am covering 3 today, and I'm hoping to get all 3 in a reasonable period of time. But hey, before we get started, do me a favor and check out some of the products and services that I have over on the website, youryardcoach.com. You may find a few key things there that'll help you out on all the frustrations I've covered in the past 2 weeks and what I'm covering here this week. Hey, let's get started, shall we? Hey, we're talking about 3 particular frustrations. Ones that maybe aren't as big as the last 2, but certainly I have seen and have heard on the lips of many homeowners because they just don't know what they don't know. We're covering 3 topics. The first one is going to be pruning. The second one is going to be garden equipment. And the third is going to be winter protection. And I may throw in a bonus depending on how long it gets. So without further ado, let's talk about pruning. You know, right now I'm recording and coming to you in January of 2026. We are smack dab in the middle of our winter season and discussing a topic many people kind of just scratch their head over because they really don't know what they don't know. And that's, pruning. And basically it's the when do I do it? How much do I do it? Why am I doing it? The timing of it all. And if I do it, what kind of results should I expect? We will cover some of the main frustrations and hopefully clarify some plants that can be a little confusing to some folks. So let's start off. So why do we prune? What purpose does it really serve? Pruning is kind of loosely defined as removing portions of plant material to improve the overall health and appearance of a particular plant. Now, I didn't pull that from anything. That's out of my own brain, believe it or not. So, in a way, even mowing your lawn is a form of pruning, right? But many times folks don't educate themselves enough about the plant or plants they are pruning. They just need to clean it up. They need to tidy it up. And it doesn't matter what it is or, what it looks like or what type of plant, what time of year, it needs to be cleaned up and needs to be cleaned up yesterday. Folks also apply pruning to plants that could probably benefit from a small amount of pruning, and they lop off half the plant to the ground and don't understand why it isn't growing back anymore. Or, worse yet, just flat out dies for some reason as a result of. And I have seen this. People go out there and they're literally using pruning saws for hedges, kitchen shears for nipping and tucking, and the best, these types of equipment aren't the best first line of defense, say for a holly or boxwood hedge. Hand equipment, power equipment, all have the right place in the pruning world. And a little research goes a heck of a long ways before cut number 1 is even made. You would not go out and want to do engine work on your car just because someone said, hey, you really should get that thing tuned up. So they go to the auto parts store and they pick up a bunch of stuff, never done it before, and they just start, spark plugs were on sale, I'll put some spark plugs in. Oil was on sale, I'll just throw this oil in. And that's not the way we approach our vehicles, I hope. So why would we approach our landscape, pruning-wise, in the same way? I would probably say, this is kind of a summation, but I would be safe to say that the following 6 plants oftentimes garner the most attention and head scratching because they're really not sure how to approach them. They haven't done any research, and as a result, they prune, but they don't get the results that everybody else does. Let's go over just those 6. We'll just kind of narrow it in just a little bit. Those 6 are hydrangeas, azaleas, and rhododendrons, fruit trees, and a broad brush approach to that, berry vines, and grapes. Here is probably the easy advice I can offer. Since people viewing YouTube always want instant answers and instant gratification, here you go. Know your plants from the beginning, then prune as needed and recommended. You have to know what you're pruning before you prune it, because if you prune it wrong or at the wrong time, you affect the outcome of that plant for the rest of its life, whether it be a long life or whether it be a short life based on you coming up with something sharp next to it. Here's a for instance. We don't prune azaleas in the fall of the year or late winter, as the way the plant works, and this also applies to rhododendrons as well, the way the plant works is it blooms in the spring or early summer. Those blossoms fall off, seed heads form, and new growth appears right after and right at the end of the blooming cycle. Then throughout the rest of the growing year, the plant goes into growth mode. It goes into leaf production and it flushes out. Then towards the end of the summer and into the early fall, it stops the leaf production and it goes into next year's blossom formation. Now, I have perfect examples of both out here at Brook and Pond. I have hardy rhododendron and hardy azalea, and I put them in last year. And although when I planted them, they were past the blooming cycle pretty much, I got a few left on the azalea and a couple left on the rhododendron, but then they were gone. So if I wanted to alter the size and shape of those rhododendrons and azaleas right after the bloom, literally right after the bloom, is when I'm going to approach it as far as pruning, not in August, September, and October. Because wow, that azalea really grew this year and now it's way too big. If you don't care about next spring or next summer's blooms, have at it. Just understand that next year, you're probably not going to have any color, plain and simple. So the old adage, the old ornamental horticultural gardener's mantra is prune after the bloom, prune after the bloom. And that is right after the bloom, not 3 months after the bloom, right after the bloom. And then you'll be pretty good to go. Now, when I was out there putting out snow stakes and other things this fall, I looked at my azaleas and my rhododendrons, and sure enough, right on time, right at the tips of the terminal buds of each branch, you could see the cluster of buds ready to go for next year. And if I'd come in, I would have destroyed those. So when it comes to azaleas and rhododendrons, remember, right after the bloom. I always feed right after the bloom as well, because it gives that extra nutrition for the growing season and plenty of nutrition for blossom set and blossom buds next year, and just increases the overall health of the plant. I generally don't feed more than twice a year. I don't. The soils that we have and the growth rate, I'm not in a high growing zone, so the growth rate is somewhat minimal here. It's only from mid-May to end of August type of growing cycle. There's not a whole lot there. Another common theme is the 3Ds approach to azaleas and rhododendrons and anything else. The 3Ds stand for dead, diseased, and damaged. Those parts of a plant can be removed anytime. It does not matter. The more, the merrier. If you happen to buy a home and you have whatever you have out there, and you can obviously see there's a lot in the middle of the growing season, all these dead branches that are in there, or you have parts of the plant that just don't look right. Maybe they're oozing sap or they're really off-colored. Those are the types of plants that you can get in there and remove that stuff. Now, if you suspect diseased wood, I encourage you to prune with an alcohol cup next to you. Every single cut that you make, you take and dip it in the alcohol. We don't want to transfer bacterial or fungal infections to other plants and other parts of the same plant. So good, sterile pruning techniques are really, really helpful when it comes to the 3Ds approach to your pruning. Okay, moving on, fruit trees. Fruit trees always respond mostly to late winter and early spring. Late winter and early spring pruning applications. And why is that? Well, we don't want to prune in the fall necessarily because we don't want to force any new tender growth right at the time of year when the plant should be thinking about going to sleep, and what part of the plant we're pruning may affect next year's blossom and fruit. So we do it late winter, early spring. And here's something that's really, really important. The only plants that I don't suggest you approach it in this way, and that would be cherries and apricots. And I'll explain in just a little while. But when you look at your fruit trees, apples, stone fruits, except for cherries, many times citrus as well, plums, you can look at a dormant fruit tree and you will learn really quick by looking at it. You will have little buds of a single or a double nature. Singles or a double nature. And then you'll have buds that look like a cluster. So we have leaf spurs, ones that are going to emerge in leaf form only. And the clusters are called fruiting spurs. They're generally clusters of 3, 5s, 4s, 6s, various sizes depending on the type of fruit tree. So where you go in and prune will depend on a couple of things. What you want to achieve from that fruit tree, what size you want to keep it or let it grow to, and how much sun and air circulation and other things can you create for that small tree as it starts to mature. So you're going in and maybe you're heading it back a little bit, starting at the top and working it back down. Maybe you're coming from the inside out and getting rid of cross branching. And maybe you'll lose a few fruiting spurs. It's okay. It's all part of it. You know, when you go and get a haircut, you don't get a haircut and not touch 99% of your head. The hairstylist is going to take care of all of your hair, not just your bangs necessarily. But a fruit tree is kind of the same thing. You want to approach it in a totality, not just in a onesie twosie. If you only need to take off one branch, then you really probably don't need to prune it that badly. Nips and tucks are just that. We nip and tuck everywhere to achieve the results that we want to achieve. And usually that is remove the 3Ds, keep as much fruiting and blossoming spurs as possible. And then many times, I can remember doing this out at Weed Patch Ranch, especially with plums, nectarines, and peaches, as the fruit was forming throughout the early part of the season. And during the fruiting phases, the plant also goes into growth mode too. And I can remember the ultra dwarf peaches and nectarines that I had to go in and really thin out the inside of the plant to keep the sunshine and the air circulation going, or it was going to get so thick that the fruit would have a hard time coming to size and getting some sunshine on it. Or worse yet, if we started to get any sort of a fungal problem in there or any sort of a mold problem on the branches because there's just no sunlight, no air. And I always drip irrigated my orchard, so I didn't have to worry about spraying and that kind of stuff on it. So I would go in mid-season and I would nip and tuck out the new growth branches, not the fruiting branches, although in some cases, yeah, I did thin quite a bit. Some of the ultra dwarf plums and nectarines that I had were so prolific in setting fruit that I had to thin it out over the course of like 6 weeks because I had 12 trees. And even with all the thinning, 50% thinning, I had more fruit than I know what to do with. We could not can, we could not jelly, we could not give away without eventually, at the end of the season, still loading up garbage cans full of fruit and getting rid of them. It was sad. And I learned a very, very big lesson that I didn't need that many fruit trees. It was just kind of like a puff your chest out, yeah, I got 12 fruit trees, but oh my gosh, way, way too much fruit. So apricots and cherries, they respond very well to mid-season pruning. Almost like prune after the bloom type of thing, prune right after the fruit in this case. And you will see next year's fruiting spurs. Now, on many, many fruit trees, fruiting spurs will last in the same location for anywhere from 2 to 5 years. And then they get weak and the branch gets weak and it's time to remove it out and create new fruiting branches and new fruiting spurs. So remember to prune after the bloom. One exception to all of it when it comes to fruit trees is if you have water sprouts. Water sprouts are generally branches that come up from right near the base of the tree, usually always below the graft that you will see on the trunk, where they have taken a strong variety of rootstock and grafted on your Alberta or your Honeycrisp or your Bing cherry or whatever you might have. They've grafted on that there. Well, anything below that graft, you're just going to have a leaf structure from a rootstock that is not known for its fruiting production. And by allowing those water sprouts to continue, all of that energy that tree is producing oftentimes goes into these water sprouts. So go in and remove those anytime you want. Now, many people think that after blossom has come and gone, fruit set has started, you go out there and you see, holy cow, look at all the fruit we are going to have this year. Remember what I told you about my peaches and nectarines. Now, Mother Nature has a way of thinning naturally. If you have a fruiting spur that has 7 spurs on it and all of them set fruit, Mother Nature will find a way to thin that down to maybe, instead of 7, maybe 5. If it has 5, maybe 3. And in some fruit tree circles, they call that the June drop, especially for peaches and nectarines and apples and that kind of stuff. So remember that you can go in anytime and thin it out yourself. Pull off, if you have a cluster of 5 apples forming on one fruit spur, thin it out to 2 or 1. What we're looking for is not quantity. We're looking for quality in the fruit that we grow. So if you have a tree that has 500 apples on it, congratulations. But if all 500 of those come about to ripening, chances are you're going to have such a huge amount of weight in that tree that branches are going to droop and oftentimes break. And we don't want that. We want a very strong scaffold structure of a tree, and the amount of fruit that your family and friends can enjoy without damaging, weakening, or overtaxing the tree. So remember to thin that fruit out. It's a part of pruning as well. Now, as far as berries go, if you choose to do raspberries or gooseberries or blackberries, blueberries as well, I guess the main educational thrust for berry pruning is this. Remember your term primocane and floricane. Primocanes in the berry world are branches that come up the first year, and they're generally very vigorous and very aggressive, and they'll come up and grow very, very fast to the point where you'll probably have to tie them down onto a wire or a fence or whatever you're growing it on. And then we don't prune that primocane. The next year, that primocane, after it's gone dormant, and towards the end of that primocane's first year, it will start to set floral buds for next year. And that second year, it's called a floricane. The reason they call it flora, because it has a flower on it. The flower is going to lead to pollination, and then you're going to have fruit. At the end of the flora cane season, and you've gone in and you've harvested these beautiful blackberries or raspberries or whatever, that flora cane will tend to weaken dramatically. It won't die necessarily, but it probably won't set fruit the following year. And then while you're picking this beautiful fruit that you've worked so hard for, you will see next year's canes, the prima cane, coming up right as you're harvesting. There's next year's fruit. So the way that you increase production of your berry plants is at the end of your harvest season. And you've harvested your luscious, juicy berries for your jellies, jams, pies, whatever. You can come in and remove those already produced floricanes. So primicanes and floricanes, that's the easiest way I can tell you. Now, is that a hard and fast rule across the whole genre of berry growing? No, it is not. There are some hybridizers out there that have created plants, I think in the raspberry world, that it will grow and bloom and set fruit on the first year. But as an average approach to it, it grows a cane the first year, goes dormant. The second year, it will have buds on it and it will set fruit on that. After the second year, and after it's set and you've harvested your fruit, cut it out. Increase more primicanes for next year's floricanes. Follow me? Now, in Weepatch Ranch, I came from part of the Central Valley that was one of the biggest wine-producing regions in the world. As big, but maybe not as famous as the Napa Valley, but certainly as big a production was in the Central Valley. And grape growers basically follow one hard and fast rule. And that is they will generally let their brand new baby grapes that they've planted grow as fast as they can for 1 to 2 years. Then they'll start heading it back. They'll head it back pretty hard and create secondary branches, which they can get up and put onto wire vines, or the old-fashioned way was freestanding. But grapes flower and set fruit on new wood. So every year, the producers of grapes for wine or raisins or grape juice or whatever, they want as much new growth as they can possibly handle on the plant and the vines and everything else. So we want to encourage new growth every year. Again, we come in at mid to late winter and we do our pruning. And we force and cut in a manner to where the new buds, when they come out, they're going to be easily growing towards the wire that it can be soft wrapped on and grow that way. When it comes to growing and harvesting grapes on an ornamental residential level, we want to do kind of the same thing. We want to either grow it on wire, we want it to grow up and over an arbor, we want to do it in a number of fashions, but we want to prune it back fairly hard each winter and allow it to come back. A way you can tell that you've waited too long to prune a grape is if you cut one of the vines and it starts to leak. It starts to leak quick and fast. That means that the plant is coming back to life, coming out of dormancy, pushing nutrients and water and stuff up into the plant emerging from dormancy, and it's leaking. So we want to do it depending on where you're at. Where I live, they would hit it right after Christmas, and then they would hit it January and February. And then by March 1st was kind of the cutoff date. Many times if you started pruning out there in zone 9, by March, it wasn't leafing yet, but fluids and sugars and carbohydrates and liquid energy was coming back up into the plant. So wherever you're at, maybe your March 1st might be April 1st. Maybe it's April 15th or whatever, depending on the zone. You can always reach out to your nurseryman or whoever and ask the advice when you're buying your grapes. Hey, what's the latest that I can prune this around here? And see what they say. So that's what I have for you for pruning. Now let's cover equipment. Experience, basically, can teach a person what tools you need as a DIY homeowner. Some folks have a minimum, hence the thriving tool rental industry. And others have a tool for every single need, especially if you are rural and you have maybe bigger yards. You may have bigger tools and maybe more power tools. But if you are a newbie and just bought your first home, here are a few suggestions for tool inventory to care for all things landscape-wise. Now, is this hard and fast? No, it is not. It's just something off the top of my head that can certainly get you started and attack most landscape needs by hand tools. And at the end, a few power tools can be mixed in, depending on how you feel about it. My first one is a flex or grass rake. What? A flex or grass rake. This is for raking up leaves, raking up grass clippings, cleaning and leveling and smoothing mulch that you might put out in the beds. Very, very important, probably my number one. The second one is another rake, and it's the steel tined rake. It's meant for moving, grading, leveling, and in some cases cleaning up, but mostly pushing and raking of material. Next is a square head shovel, one that is great for, it's often called a transfer shovel, it's a scoop shovel, whatever you want to call it. But it's made for picking and moving up material, generally off something of a smooth surface, but not always. And it is not meant for digging into the ground to plant something. No, not unless you have super soft sandy soil. The next one is its brother, the pointed shovel or the round face shovel, depending on the style that you get. This is more for planting, digging in the dirt, making a hole, digging a trench in some cases. The next one is an axe of various sizes. If you have something to split firewood, if you have small invasive trees like Texas privet or wild plum, and you need to get out there and just chop some of these things down. The next one is a pickmatic, one that has a point at one end and a blade at the other. Very, very important, especially if you get into removing small bushes and trees. If you're digging trenches, pickmatic is a very, very, very useful tool. Pruning shears. Pruning shears, the handheld pruning shears put out by Felco or Corona or Fisker. These are all good brands, and they're meant for nips and tucks on anything green. Its bigger brother is the lopping shears. Lopping shears are hand pruners with a longer handle and a lot more leverage, where you can cut up to 1.5 to 2 inch branches. And its biggest brother is the pole pruner, one that has a hand pruner on a rope and a small pruning saw, a curved pruning saw that's attached to the end, where you can get up into trees and remove dead, damaged, or diseased wood. Remember our 3Ds, and also nip and tuck higher up things that you need to address. There's also the push reel mower. There's also power reel mowers, and they're really geared and gauged towards very short turf like bent grass and putting green type of grasses. The next one is your rotary mower, 18 to 22 inch or bigger, and your ride-on mowers if you have larger turf areas. These are something that can either be gas, and now they have some pretty darn good electric ones as well. The next one would be a string trimmer or edger. Now these can be a hand tool if you want. You have the old bladed wheeled edger that you can roll along the edge of a sidewalk or a driveway or a walkway and edge that way. That's pretty old school. You also have hand clippers that you can edge in and around sprinkler systems and stuff. And then you get off into the battery or gas-powered string trimmers. Some people call them whips. Some people call them edgers, whatever you want to call them. And lastly, and not nearly as popular anymore, is the gas-powered edger that has an actual straight blade, a 7-inch straight blade, and you would just roll it along the edge of your hard surface and edge your lawns that way. I think the easiest way to do it is with a power string trimmer nowadays, either battery or gasoline. And lastly, and certainly by no means least, is a quality, large capacity, like 3 cubic foot or larger, wheelbarrow. That'll get you started for sure. From here, with those in the garage or the shed, from there you can evolve into more specific tools for specific applications. Like you can get into tools for irrigation equipment, electrical tools for low voltage lighting, fertilizer spreaders, chainsaws, larger landscape leveling rakes, digging bars, and the list just goes on and on and on. Many folks don't need many of the power equipment that is available out there. One, they are costly nowadays to buy, and many only need it a time or two. Here's where renting comes into play. Machines like rototillers, sod cutters, lawn aerators, concrete saws and jackhammers, etc. They're all available, for daily or weekend or weekly rates, depending on what your project might be. But it's not something that you want to just keep in the garage because you may only use it once. And that's a huge expense unless you're going into business for yourself. For those tools that you do own, maintenance is key to a long, functional, safe life for anything that you have. You have something that runs on gas? Yeah, you gotta change the oil. You gotta change the spark plug. You gotta look at belts and blades. The more that you pay attention to that stuff, the longer the machine is going to perform for you, and the better it's going to do if you take off the lawnmower blade at least once a year, if not more, and sharpen it up a little bit. If you buy it at a garage sale, inspect that blade. Put a new one on it just 'cause. And then spark plugs, yeah, I average about every other year. Oil is every spring. Lubrication on some of the wheels and tires and Zerk fittings for grease, etc. All makes it go a long time. Hand tools are no exception. I sharpen my pruning shears twice a year. The shovel gets edged up and brushed off, and an oil coat in the fall, double checked in the spring. Axes get sharpened multiple times a year here. Chainsaws, the blades get changed, I would say 3 times a year, and each chain gets sharpened before it gets put back up on the hook for a while. And I do not use a chainsaw with a dull or loose blade. You are asking for a dangerous accident to happen. If you go electric, maintaining the batteries, remember lithium rechargeable batteries really do not like cold. My camper batteries, my DeWalt series of batteries, they are in the utility room in the house right now. They are not out in the garage, and they are certainly not sitting on my equipment. Even the lawnmower, the ride-on 46-inch Husqvarna lawnmower, the battery is out of it, and it sits on a trickle charger in the utility room right now. Take care of your stuff, and it will take care of you. When it comes to axes, sharpen that thing at least once a year if you're using it. If you're not using it, I always suggest treating the head with a light motor oil or something so it doesn't just sit there and rust on you. Same with your shovels, your hose, etc. So remember those things. Now, I'm going to give you a bonus. And the bonus section of this is plant ID. When I was in the retail nursery world, people would bring in snippets of their plant, or they would call first and say, is there anybody there that can ID a plant that we have? We bought a house, we don't know what it is. Absolutely, come on down. And they would come in and I would look at it, and 99% of the time, now let me back that up, 95% of the time, I'd be able to say, oh, this is a such and such, and it grows such and such, in such and does best with such and such. And they go, oh, good, we need another one. Go out, show them a plant, and that's how you made sales, offering the service. But for many people who maybe don't need more plants. They just want to know what they have. Heck, there are apps on your handheld computer now, called a phone, that you can take pictures of things. I have done it out here at Brook and Pond for some of the native species that are here that I was not familiar with when I moved in. And I went around and I took pictures of things, and sure enough, that app would kick it out, probably 90% of the time. So it's very easy to learn what you have. And then once you learn it, oftentimes the same apps come up with the care and where it grows and how big it gets, etc. If it doesn't, it just IDs it for you. You can always look it up, Google the damn thing, and you'll know it, just about everything there is to know about the plant. And that's just good, responsible homeownership. Someone asks you, hey, what do you got out there in the corner? That's really pretty. What is it? And you go, I don't know. I don't know what it is. My wife likes it. You know, as a homeowner that you're cutting a mortgage check and insurance and taxes and everything else, you own it. You own the home, so own everything in and around it. And part of that is knowing what the heck is in the yard. Plain and simple. And before you buy something, know what it is. You know, if you're going to Home Depot one day and the missus is off with the girls for a nail appointment, and she says, hey, would you pick up one of those loropetalums in the nursery for me because I want to add another loropetalum. You go to Home Depot, walk out there, hey, do you got any loropetalums? And the department person, I won't say experienced, educated nursery person, but the department person takes you over and go, I think that's what, and you just pick it up, throw it in the cart, and off you go. You get it home, and you hand it over to the wife, and she looks at it, and she goes, this is loropetalum, but this is the regular loropetalum. I wanted the purple pixie. This thing gets 12 feet tall by 12 feet wide. Well, you told me to pick a loropetalum. I got a loropetalum. Make sure that you say, what kind? What variety? And then look for it. Look at the tag, read the back of the tag, and know the sizes and where it goes and what exposures and what zone it can survive and not survive in, and educate yourself on what you're putting in your hard-earned home. So ID your stuff. When you buy stuff, make sure it's the same kind. Make sure it's whatever plant you're planting is going to thrive in that spot in your home. I've gone down to box stores where I'm at, and in the springtime, the box store chain goes on a bulk buying binge. And we were seeing plants that were 3 and 4 zones out of where we live. We live in zone 4. They were shipping in teddy bear magnolias into zone 4 that can't take anything certainly below zone 8. And I took some pictures and did a short video on it. Know your plants and know that they're actually going to thrive in your zone. Well, there you go. If you haven't yet, I hope you check out the website, youryardcoach.com. If you have any questions from this or any other plant or landscape related question, feel free to email me, youryardcoach@gmail.com. Hey, I'm Coach Matt. As always, to your landscape success, I will catch you on the next one. I appreciate your time, and check us out over on YouTube and the other platforms as well. Goodbye for now.